other thing I've had to give up on. And I'm not saying everybody that does a podcast have to do this, but perfection. And so, you know what? I'm not going to re-record it. It's just the way it is. And I'm not perfect. And I don't expect anybody else to be.
Most hosts never achieve the results they hoped for. They're falling short on listenership and monetization, meaning their message isn't being heard and their show ends up costing them money. This podcast was created to help you grow your listenership and make money while you're at it. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Adam Adams.
What's up, podcaster? It is your host, Adam A. Adams. And if you've ever thought to yourself, why is his first name the same as his last name? And I've never been able to answer that. Don't worry. My mom is actually on the podcast today. And we can be like, what the hell were you thinking when you named this kid the same name twice? Is it his real name or an alias? Is that a fake person? Well, good. Hey, all of that's true. My mother, Laura Jane, from the Laura Jane Layton show, she just started a podcast. And if you are a listener of the show and you've listened to a few episodes, you probably heard me talk about this because we are actually serving her. So I've got a few questions. Here's the thing. She's brand new. We'll call her brand spanking new because honestly, you're new if you're less than 2 years. And as we record, she's only had a handful of episodes published. And so we want to get her experience of what she's going through, what she's learning, and that'll especially help you if you don't yet have your podcast, but you're thinking about having a podcast. She wanted one and something happened, which finally got her to do it. And we want to talk about that for you as well. Like what needs to happen for you to finally get out and do it. So I think we're going to start with the question that everybody wants to know. Why is my name Adam Adams?
I wish I had a good story for that. Your name is Adam Adams because I didn't pick it.
Okay. I always have a hard time answering that when people ask, because everybody always asks me if it's my real name. I'll call, like, there will be somebody who's like probably a drunk driver and really dangerous. And so I'll like dial 911 or whatever and get on the phone with them. Then they'll always ask, who's reporting this? What is your name? It's like, my name's Adam. They're like, okay, Adam, what is your last name? And then it'll go like this. It'll be like, Adams. No, idiot. They don't say that part out loud. No, idiot. I just asked your last name. And then I'll say it again, Adams. And they're like, so your last name is Adams? Yeah. Oh, okay. And then they laugh
your first
at me.
name then?
They laugh at me and they're like, okay, so then what was your first name? Adam. No, your first name. And it's like they're frustrated with me because we're going through this. And I've learned over time, whenever somebody asks me now, I usually say my full name is Adam Adams. Same name twice. The last name is the same, but just add an S. And it does actually help. But when most people are doing it, they are in a field on some computer where they only have to do one or the other. And they're like, no, you idiot, your last name, your first name. Then, oh, if that's your first name, then what was your last name? So
I'm sorry I gave you such a crazy life.
Bio dad named me from the Bible. And later on in life, I got your maiden name.
Maiden name, yes.
Okay. Good deal.
Yes.
And so my birth certificate does say Adam Adams.
It does.
You're wondering, if you're listening and you're wondering, that is clear.
You do have a cousin, Daniels.
And Brooklyn Brooksby.
Yeah.
And I've met a Swen Swenson, a Carl Carlson, and who knows how many John Johnsons I've met. It's a common name.
One of them was the big boss where I worked.
All right. So we've talked a lot about that. And I think my listener is always like, is that his real name? So now that I've finally got my mom on. So I want to talk a little bit about your podcast journey because like for you had talked to me about the podcast months, maybe years, but definitely months before you launched one. You were considering it, you were thinking about it. And I want to find out what held you back, if you would do it differently or the same next time. So kind of like what held you back from doing it, even though you kind of knew you wanted, and if you would do anything differently. Because I think that the listener, especially if they don't yet have their podcast, they're like there. They think that they're there. They don't realize how long it might prolong them.
Right.
So I'm curious, what do you think in your experience?
I know that it was mid last year. So about a year ago when I started wanting to share my message, which is getting rid of that negative voice, that critical thinking. I call it the bully voice, and becoming your own best friend. And just started, how can I do this? Like, I work full time, I have all these things going on, and how could I actually make it work where I could share this message? So back, I think November, I started a Facebook page that was just all of my replacement ears. Instead of saying sorry, say thank you. And just these things that I think can take away some of that limiting belief by just changing a word. And so I started that, and I thought these would make great podcasts if you could just talk long enough about one or two of them. So then I started talking to you about it, and you're like, oh yeah, each one of these could be its very own podcast. And so that's when I started moving down that direction of what would I actually say about this? Because I tried to keep the Facebook post just really sweet, short, and simple. So then it was, okay, how do I do this? And I got lucky that I knew somebody so well that already does this. And so you and I had a couple brainstorm sessions. And then it was just, when will Jane really be ready to do this? And so it was just kind of that a little bit of evolving. And when I first said, okay, I'm taking this contract, this is the one I'm going to do with you, let's get moving, I was going to do one podcast a week. And, I can do the editing, I can do this. And then as I learned and I listened to all your podcasts and the education of you really need more than one a week to propel yourself a little bit quicker. And so I wanted to do the challenges and I wanted to do interviews. So now I do 3 a week. So I upped the package to the next one up so I could do more than one a week and not have to do or learn the editing. And this is the easiest tool ever. I push record, I send them a link, and I'm done. So it's really nice. Your team is so good picking out the right information to use as advertisement, picking out the right clips to use as teasers going in, and I don't have to think of any of it. So it's just been amazing. I think the hardest part for me was getting off the pot. Just do it. Just do it. And I think I recorded like 10 or so, and you and I would go back and forth. And your favorite thing was, Mom, you're doing that fake voice again. Just be you. Just be you.
So let's also talk about that too. Okay. All right. Well, I'm just going to type this down, fake voice. I don't know if I called it the fake voice, but that's how, okay. All right. Fair enough. I'll never argue with you. I know better. So do you know where you were right before I interrupted you? Because I want you to go ahead and finish that, and then I'll go to my questions.
Well, no, but is just that back and forth, that practice, that try something. And when do you finally feel like you're just talking and it doesn't matter anymore? And so that was where I finally I threw those first 10 away. They're gone. I didn't even keep them. It's just like, nope, fake voice. And you got it. Like, I've been in the corporate world for 35 plus years, and I led many, many, many meetings. And so I had a very controlled, don't have personality, don't have this, just get to the facts, get it done. And that's what I came into this with. And now it's like, oh, cool, I can be myself again. Yeah. And that's really letting that professional image go was the best.
Awesome. I like that. So here are a few of my current questions, and I'm sure I'll have more. Let's start by just acknowledging a couple of things that you said. First and foremost, Laura Jane Layton. Wait, I forgot. Is your podcast have your last name in it?
It does.
The show?
It's the Laura Jane Layton.
So the Laura Jane Layton show.
There was a lot of other Laura Janes out there, and I wanted to trademark it. So.
Got it. Okay. So with the Laura Jane Layton show, one of your passions is sharing the inner voice, the critic voice, the bully voice, that inner voice that can hold us back from what we want to achieve. And even when we don't know that it's doing that. And you mentioned there's a few things that you do. You've put them on Facebook. So you're passionate about the language that we use inside ourselves. And you understand that for you, the language that you use got you to a different place when you switched out some words. And I've noticed that for me as well. I have been a type of person that attacks things, gets excited about things, has a lot of motivation, inspiration in a lot of places. And I guess one of the differentiators might be just how loud our inner voice is and what it's saying. Like if my voice is unsure about me and my capabilities, if the language I use, even if it's not intentional, it can hold me back. It can hold the listener back today. It can hold an entrepreneur back. It can hold a parent back. It can hold a podcaster back and maybe slow us down from even doing a podcast or however that is. So I think that that's an interesting thing. And I do want to go into some of it, especially because I want our listener today to know what you do so that they can go to your podcast if that's right for them. And B, because some of these things are really, really helpful. And one of the things that you mentioned was getting rid of the word sorry. And I think you said in replacing it with the phrase, thank you. And I thought that was an interesting thing. Well, you and I, we were on a vacation with a lot of the rest of the family in Moab, Utah. And I seemed to say sorry a lot, even when I didn't need to be sorry about something, even when it wasn't my fault. I said it a lot. And you challenged me not to. You challenged me to try to replace it. And I did okay. I definitely focused on it during that whole day and after and since. And I keep noticing myself do it. Somebody's sick. Oh, I'm sorry you're sick. Well, it's not my fault that you're sick. I didn't do something. I'm sad that you're sick. That's too bad that you're sick. But it doesn't have to be, I'm sorry. I don't have to take it on me every time. I will say this, something that I learned as a server. So I did door-to-door sales for a long time. I did serving and bartending for a long time. And I ran some of my own businesses for a long time. When I was a server, one of the restaurants that I worked at told us that when a client, or we called them guest, when a guest at our establishment had an issue, we were told to thank them for bringing it up. So I thought that was interesting. You said replace sorry for thank you, because I don't think I'd ever heard you say that before, Mom, but I had heard you say, don't say sorry or try to replace sorry with other things.
Right. And it all depends on the reason you're sorry. Like I was late for a meeting, sorry, or thank you for waiting, or thank you for getting started without me, or the one you're talking about of the condolences. Oh, I'm so sorry your pet died. It's like, oh my gosh, I know that can be so hard. Be more sympathetic, not just, oh, sorry, because now it's affecting me because you're sorry. Your pet died, so I'm sorry. Yeah. And to me, sorry is a shameful word. Mm-hmm. I don't know if every family does it, but when you get in a fight and you have to look at each other and say sorry, well, you're not at the time, but you're having to do it. And so very shameful feel that comes with that word. So that's why I challenge that one.
I like it. And well, what I learned, it was really effective at the restaurant when somebody came up to us and said, my steak is overcooked. A normal response that happens frequently is, I am so sorry. Let me replace that for you, which works. But I think what works even better is, thank you for letting me know. I will let the kitchen know. I'll replace it for you right away. And is there anything I can do in the meantime? It's all positive. Right. It's like, we needed to know this. And that is a thing that I now do with my team, with my management team. We inevitably have an issue. Something goes out and we edit it, but we put like the wrong person's name because two people are working on it and they just switch the names or something, or the podcast number, or we might misspell something that it's spelled right, but it means something different, or who knows what. There's all sorts of issues that can happen when you're editing and producing and marketing podcasts. And so it doesn't happen a lot, but when it happens, if I see the reply come from, let's say, Teresa, my right-hand person, When Teresa's like used to say, I am so sorry, blah, 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 I always felt weird inside. I was like, I think this is too much. I think this is taking on too much. I think let's try the other way. And so I started training my management team to just say thank you instead of sorry. So they'll go to the client and say, thank you for bringing this to attention that we made the mistake. That's not what we are looking for. We're not trying to make mistakes. So you pointing this out is very, very helpful. We'll get it solved as fast as we can. What can we do for you in the meantime? Something like that.
I never really thought about it, but I think I brought a couple things to you guys' attention. And every time it's thank you. Like they do it like that. So good training.
I think it's awesome that you do it too.
I think thank you kind of gives you that we're going to take advantage of this learning process. Sorry to me still is that,
it's kind of empty sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's thank you for letting us know. We're going to fix it right now. Is there anything we can do for you in the meantime? And it seems to go well. So while we're on the subject, this is what happens on your podcast a lot. You've got the 3 episodes a week. Mm-hmm. You said you upgraded from one smaller package to a bigger package so that you could do more episodes each week.
Yes.
Because you wanted to get the value that multiple episodes will do. And the listener today who's just hearing about you, maybe for the first time, maybe they've heard about you in some of my other episodes.
I've listened to all your podcasts and you've brought it up more than once.
More than once for sure. So they are listening and maybe it's the first time that they are experiencing you. And so I want to give you just a quick opportunity to do 2 things. Can you bring up just one other word that we mistakenly use and can solve?
Yes. And this one is, I think for you and your listener and all your customers, this one would be very, very helpful is we always say, I don't have time. Or you could even say, I don't have the money. Either one of those, that is so wrong. That is so not true. We all have the same amount of time. We all have the same amount of opportunities. It's our priorities. If I say, oh, hey, Adam, I don't have time for that. What did I just tell you? I'm making an excuse. But if I said, Adam, right now, my priorities are a little bit different and I need to tackle these other things and I'll get with you as soon as I can, that gives you a whole different flavor. That gives, I'm not just throwing it out the door with I don't have time. I've analyzed it. I've looked at it and I'm giving you an honest response, not just like when someone says, how are you doing? And you say, fine, that automatic trigger. When you hear that, it's just routine. When I hear someone say, I don't have time, they haven't thought about it. But if they say, you know what, my priorities right now are a little bit different. I've got to get these 2 things done. And I remember even doing this with you in this podcast process of I wanted to get my website up. I wanted to get my podcast out. I wanted to get all these things I wanted to have done. And it was right now, I have got to have my website up first. It's my priority. And then I will get my podcast up. And then I will get my coaching business up. So I've got these little building and stepping stones that those are my priority. And it's not that I don't have time. I'm doing it in this order because I have some kind of process for it. So that's the other one. And I've heard a few of the people that you've interviewed use that. I don't have time. And it's like, you are maxed. You are busy. But it's a routine answer like, I'm fine.
Yeah. I'm internalizing that a lot. I don't have time. I don't have money are things we can get rid of. And by using other words, I know that you've said before, I don't think you said it right now.
Okay.
But you have said it before to me. When we say, I don't have time, it's more like a victim mentality. It's more in a way of, I don't control my time. So we're not even acknowledging that. But when we switch it to, that's not my priority right now, I'm going to focus on this first, it gives us power. It helps us know that we're in control and we're not being controlled by life and time, but we are in control of our life and time. And it gives us a lot more, I guess, power is the easiest word for me to use.
It's self-empowering when you realize that it is all your choices to choose whether you have time to do something or not. Wow. I was like, oh my gosh, I have the power to make that choice. And I love that. I just love the feeling afterwards.
Yeah. Good stuff. And so that is for the listener today, being that something that we can challenge them to do right now is if they haven't, for example, launched their podcast, or if they haven't gone from 1 episode to 2 or 3 episodes, for example, but they want to, they haven't done it, except they keep saying that they want to. They keep knowing that they should, rather than saying that the reason for not doing it is because I don't have time or money. Then they can say the reason I'm not doing this is right now is because I want to do this first.
I want to make sure
just
this
by
is
switching
done.
that.
Yes.
Or get off their ass and just do the thing. Just like, hey, I can't make that excuse anymore, so I'm just going to get it done.
If it's not really a priority, then you have time.
Yeah. Awesome. Now, I want to acknowledge another thing that you said. And what I'm hearing is something that a lot of people have. I definitely had as well. It sounds like you had it, and maybe our listener does too. And you mentioned that my team has been helping you, that it makes it easier. You only really have to do the recording. And so what I want to bring up is the easy button. That's actually our tagline at Grow Your Show, the easy button for podcasters. But it's having the easy button. It's being able to know that you could be the star of your show without figuring out all those things. So for Adam Adams, back in the day, years ago, before I ever started any podcast, I held it back because I didn't know how to do all of the hard stuff. I didn't know it all. And I was overwhelmed by trying to figure out how to learn it and where to learn it and where to look it up and where to get good information. And so it took me about a year as well to launch my first podcast. And what I'll say is anyone who starts a year after they decide that they want to start could have had a lot more value if they would have started when they wanted to start, by having that whole additional year of content out. So utilizing a team can be a huge benefit. So I want to bring up that as well. And then move to the fake voice that you mentioned. I want to move to the fake voice and understand a little bit more about what you meant. You did say that you were in corporate and you wanted to just be matter of fact in those meetings and have the things that needed to come out just come out. And so now let's talk about presenting on a podcast. Maybe even you could show us the difference between a fake voice and the real voice and tell us why you prefer utilizing the real one.
Oh, wow. That is so hard. Okay. Here's an example. When I would lead meetings and when they became remote and you had to avoid a lot of side conversation, you had to make sure you were very slow and articulate to make sure that people were hearing it with minimal amount of inflection so that it didn't get disturbed.
Is that what you're doing right now?
Yes, that's what I was doing.
Okay, because I hate it.
But if you can take the time and you can add some inflection and you can be a little bit more natural, it's way more engaging. And so I had to go from thinking I needed to make it very clear to making sure it was very engaging. And engaging is my natural personality. I just have fun, enjoy life, and forget about all the sticks up of your hind end. So yes, I was a project manager. I have never done my own things. I've always had teams do it all for me. And just thinking like I was going to do this all by myself. And you had gotten the software I needed, everything I needed was in place. And I'm like, I don't do my own stuff. I'm not doing this. I got to figure out a way to make the money for this a priority. Because initially I'm going, I don't have the money because I had just retired. I no longer have an income. And now how do I justify forking out money, whatever rate it is, every month? And it just was worth it. This is me. This is my branding. And if I'm going to brand me, I am not going to be the slow and articulate person. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to make sure you know I'm having fun too. That's the difference of my fake voice and my not fake voice.
I love it. I remember when we were at your house, just kind of like setting up your podcast and everything, and you were practicing and you had like the more businessy, serious, matter of fact voice. And I guess lack of voice inflection would also be
Right.
part of that. And you would be like having a good time with the whole family. You'd be like, blah, 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 joyful and excited. And you would even say that you're happy to do the podcast. And then you would go in and you'd be, I'm going to imitate you. It's going to be so bad, but you would be like this and hey, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, Mom, what is happening? That's not who you are. And so just show us who you are. And I would say it took 10-ish episodes for you to kind of get to that place where you were like, hey, I can just be me. I can be who I am. And that's okay. I can attract the right person that way.
And the other thing I've had to give up on, and I'm not saying everybody that does a podcast have to do this, but perfection. You know what? If you screw up something, it's just the way it is. And I still do. I laugh at news anchors. I laughed at sports commentators that mess up and they say the wrong word. Like I've got an episode out there that says, and I'm still trying to prove that when I meant I'm still trying to disprove that, you know?
Yep.
And so, you know what? I'm not going to re-record it. It's just the way it is. And I'm not perfect. And I don't expect anybody else to be. But I hope that that listener out there is thankful that you told me to quit being fake.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I hope it wasn't rude when I said it.
You know what? It's appropriate. There's another thing is there's a way to give constructive criticism. It's not rude. The way you deliver it can always be kind and friendly. If the person takes it rude, that's their fault. And if you're condescending in the way, like if you were to say, Mom, you always use that professional voice, that would be condescending, where you're putting this always tag on it and you're being like, I'm better than you. But the second you do it in a kind way, or I don't want to say matter of fact, because people use that as I'm just being honest when they're really being rude and honest at the same time. So it's just kind of where's that balance of being kind, and people are going to take things rude. People are going to take things not how you meant them. You don't have any power to change that.
Yeah. Let me ask you, let's do a quick commercial break. And I would like to get some information from you as we end today's episode, just with what you've really learned along the way, even if that you're in this shorter period of having the podcast out and up and running. What have you learned along the way that you're learning now that really the listener who's launching a podcast needs to know? So let's pause and we'll be right back. Hey, my friend, as you know, this episode is sponsored by my company, growyourshow.com. We want you to be able to have the best tools at your disposal without costing you a whole arm and a leg. So right now you can get a free list of vetted equipment that like mics, mixers, webcams, sound treatment, editing software, everything that you need. I created the whole PDF with direct purchase links just to save you time and money, to help it be more convenient for you. So this free PDF will help you skip all the guesswork. If it's on there, it's vetted and approved by yours truly. And if it's not on there, it's probably not worth the money. So go ahead and get yours at growyourshow.com/PDF. Let's get back into the show. We are back with Laura Jane Layton, aka my mother, aka the boss lady of the Laura Jane Layton Show, which is in the show notes. Before we went to the short break, I mentioned that we're going to get into some of what she's really learning and has learned along the way, especially in her infant stage, if you will. In the very beginning of launching her podcast, she's learning and growing and seeing things in a different light that you can't see before you start, and you certainly forget it year or two down the line. So I'm loving that I have you at this moment, at this juncture, because I think it's going to be perfect for the listener. So I want to find that out. And right before we get there, I'll just wrap up a couple of cool things that have come out already. The words that we use, they stick. They mean something. So let's think about those words. And if you want a better chance at learning how to do that, Laura Jane on the Laura Jane Layton show goes through this in short. 2 of her episodes every week are talking about how to do this. And then the other episode is when she's interviewing somebody. And I think that can really help you, especially if you want to grow yourself with the words that you tell. Get rid of the inner bully, etc. We talked a little bit about utilizing the easy button. We talked about my name being Adam Adams. We also talked about using your real voice instead of a fake voice, how to do that, and that she threw away 10 of the episodes. And now it's time to get to what is your just best advice? What have you learned along the way that you could share today?
What I have learned the most is to not be so critical of myself, to allow the mistakes and move on, to trust the process. Number 22, this is how many I've got, 22, a whole month's worth. I launched the very last week of May. So we have a whole month out there. And really, it's just the simplicity of allowing it to just happen. I'll start my interview sessions and I find I just have to do these 2 or 3 cleansing breaths before I get into it. Just
I like that.
And let go. Because I get like up front, I'm talking to them, telling them all about the show, what to expect. And then it's, okay, let's just.
Is it like meditation? Like, tell me about these breaths, what you're thinking about when you're having a cleansing breath. I like that it kind of refocuses you to where you are and get you present. I'm just curious what goes on in your mind and how big the breath is and that kind of stuff.
A cleansing breath is usually twice the exhale as the inhale. So
I think you need to get even closer to the mic if we're going to hear it.
No, I'm just kidding.
But I get you. So definitely, really it's like whatever you breathe in, you want to double it. You want to ensure you're doubling it on the way out. So it could be like 2 seconds in, 4 seconds out, or 5 seconds in, 10 seconds out, something like that.
Yeah, everybody's got a different breath capacity. So it's just double the time out. And what that does for me is because I use it to de-stress. I've used it for years and years and years. And the first part of my podcast, when it's interview, is really communication, making sure I'm not dropping any of the really important things. Is my mic on the right mic input? Because yes, I've recorded it. Did I push record? Yes, I've done one and had to re-record. Well, actually record because I didn't record. All these little stepping things. So the beginning of a podcast is a very structured doom, 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 doom. And I got through the checklist. Okay, now let go and record and just be out of your head and into that natural spirit. And I call it my inner wisdom or that silent wisdom, that peace that I try to get out of my head and allow whatever process, whether you believe in God or the universe or inspiration, to let those things in. And those, I want to focus on not controlling that. And so that's what I've learned, is to let go of being perfect, let go of having this huge, long checklist, and just have some bullet points of what I want to cover and let it flow. And yeah, it's way fun. I've had fun. I expected it to feel like work, and it's not.
That's cool. I like that. I hope that the listener has that same experience as well, because sometimes it feels like work to me. And I would say most of the time it doesn't, but some of the time it does. And I'm like, oh, here we go. Got to do this. So if the listener is more, well, I don't even know if I should say more like me, but at least I could say more like me on those times that they feel like it's going to be work. They're less excited about it. Is there a tip or trick that we can do to get into that zone where it doesn't feel like work?
I think as long as we're second guessing ourselves and trying to be perfect, it's going to feel like work. And when you can let down the shield and just let it be an experience, it's way more entertaining. And I think everybody has a different way of doing that, but it's the same as when I was leading project meetings. They could be pretty dang tough and a lot of controversy. If I didn't have those ways of letting go of the stress, I used to say, if the day work is not fun, I'm done. And this is still fun. So I'm not done.
Yeah. Something came to my mind while you were mentioning that. And one thing that I think I could do is, if I can catch myself from when I say, I got to do this right now, it's like, oh, I've got to do this right now. It's like maybe even think about gratitude and say, I get to do this right now. Just change that. I got to do it I get to do it.
Got a podcast on that.
Yes, Laura Jane's got an episode about that. And I want to finish off going back to something that you said. You mentioned priorities. You mentioned, instead of saying, I don't have time, I don't have money, to say, I'm choosing to do this first. And it's bringing us to a point in this checklist / prioritization that I think could be an important way to end today's podcast episode. And I'm thinking about, like, with the prioritization of the checklist, Jane, you said the first thing that I'm going to do, I think it was my website. The second thing, I think you said my podcast. The third thing, my coaching. And I thought to myself that there are listeners who hear that they can go ready, fire, aim, and that they can take massive action and they should just start. And I believe that when they are told that they need to just start, that they basically just launch a podcast right away without any consideration of anything, just because they were told to do massive action. And you did it a little bit differently. In my view of what you've done, you did take massive action and you did just start, but you didn't just start without a plan. You looked at everything, you prioritized it first, and you took massive action. You did all the things. You just did them as a step by step by step. You put it into steps. And so maybe we could just end with the difference between what you did and what they did in your words, if you don't mind.
In my words, or in my thought, I didn't just do a website and get it all up and standing and then do a podcast. I did them at the same time. But when I had to choose a priority, I knew which one had to deliver first. And so it's not waiting for one thing to finish, but it's working on everything, but knowing which one takes precedence, so that when you are limited on how much you can get done in a day, you're getting the right thing done.
Yeah.
And that's the key is, no, I didn't wait. I worked on them both. But when it came right down to it, I needed the one stood up at least at the same time as the podcast. And so it took my priority because it was taking somebody else to do the work and not me recording it. So it wasn't my time. So while they were off working with the stuff I had come up with, I was able to work on the other thing. Yeah. So it really is just, I was a project manager for a lot of years. I know how to prioritize. I know how to identify dependencies. And so for me, it's very natural. Yeah. Other people may struggle with it. And so if you struggle with it, there are a lot of project managers out there that can help you. And I think they're on Fiverr too.
Laura Jane from the Laura Jane Layton Show, AKA Mom. Thank you for jumping on the podcast. Thank you for having me. Your inspiration. And I do hope that the listener will at least check out your podcast. The 20-something episodes already launched and all the ones that are coming forward. I love your podcast, genuinely. I get a lot out of each episode. It makes me think, even if I've heard it before, it makes me think and it makes me improve. And that's what I want from our listener today as well, is to think and improve. And I know that your podcast has a lot to do with that. And you did this into step by step by step. And I know one of the things that you're doing now is that coaching. And so people could also work with you one-on-one to just have the conversations with you as well on getting rid of that inner bully, inner voice that kind of holds us back. So I'll point that out as well.
Just as a reminder, we're not getting rid of it. We're replacing it. So, all of a sudden that voice isn't going to go away. That voice is just going to be a better support to who you are and where you want to go.
Love it. So if you're listening, Laura Jane Layton, Jane's everything is already in the show notes. So any social that she wanted to share is in the show notes. Any website to her business is in the show notes. Any link to her podcast is in the show notes. So you want to follow that, just scroll down, click, and I will see you on the next episode. I really don't say this nearly enough. I don't mention this, and I feel horrible because it's a great resource for you to be able to take your podcast to the next level. And it's simply a free resource that I don't need your email or anything. It's just a podcasting course that I created that is ended up putting in the very first 6 episodes of this podcast. So if you haven't checked it out, definitely going to want to just check out those first 6 episodes, see how they can help you improve your podcast, get in front of more people, and have a better result where you're making more money through the podcast, etc. So much can happen after you listen through episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So if you haven't done it, go do it now. And by the way, if you're subscribed, you'll keep hearing more great content. So to those of you who are, I'll see you on the next episode.